Can you guys remember the last time a company announced a new console through an exclusive interview that only talked about some of the details?
I don't think I'm old enough.
No, like not. I mean, it seems like it's the way they do it of like, hey, here's Mark Cerny talking to you about the guts or whatever. Like there's been a little bit of that. Like around the PlayStation 4, I think they had something with him.
But did we already know that like a PS4 was coming? Had they already sort of like discussed it a little bit? Because this seems like it obviously came out of nowhere for a lot of us.
Right.
And it's so casual that I'm sort of taken aback.
Yeah, but it looks casual, and you wonder like how hard did they all work to make it seem very casual, to announce this hours before Microsoft is set to announce stuff that is like not next-gen platform related.
True.
Like, it's kind of weird. I wonder if they just got tired of like Google and Microsoft's been talking about next-gen stuff for like a year now.
Right. With E3 coming and Sony not being there either.
Yeah, if they're just like, well, we need to pick a shot here, let's just go.
Yeah, because the name change stuff did not go over, so
no,
who really cared?
No. Well, I cared in that I couldn't change my name because I was verified. I had to go through whatever. That's jump through a bunch of hoops to change my name, only to realize that all the good names are taken.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is a problem. Yeah, it's wired. Yeah, I'm trying to think because there was always some early stuff where like Microsoft gave Digital Foundry some stuff.
Oh, for
in the
past,
like early on the Xbox One.
They brought them into their facilities. They gave them a tour of
right.
the different prototypes and stuff. Yeah.
So there's that, but this is like, I mean, you knew they were working on another piece of hardware. They had said that much, but
yeah, it'll be backwards compatible, of course, and definitely have a disk drive.
Yeah, there's a lot of juicy stuff.
There's
that
way more detail.
Yeah, that they just here's why. Because the thing with Digital Foundry is like, we already know the One X is coming, but we're gonna lay down like some of the technical like performance and stuff. So because that's kind of what they do. So here it's like, oh yeah, of course PS5 is coming, but there's still room for them to have a big announcement. Like, okay, y'all know that the PS5 has got this and that, but let's have they can still have a big conference where they show like the piece of hardware and they lay out like a lineup of here's like some launch games, here are the games that are like going to be on PS4 and PS5, because that's the thing too, is that Mark Cerny kind of, when they're talking about Death Stranding, it's kind of like, oh, that's a PS4 game, right? Yeah. It's like PS5, he's like, I don't know, he's being a little cheeky according to that article. So,
right.
But I mean, of course that's going to happen in those intergenerational games.
Definitely. Being backwards compatible with PS4 games, you start to wonder then, will you start to see something sort of like the Pro, where you have PS4 games that run a little bit better on a PS5.
Okay, yeah.
And then also maybe some of them get proper native PS5 versions, but maybe some of them don't.
Right.
Where they're just like, okay, you can get true 4K, none of this checkerboard stuff if you're on a PS5, but
This might be my naive side showing, but I have to imagine like in the PC space, right, when you have just like tech that scales year after year, it's all still based on a similar foundation.
Yeah.
Games can just have settings that tweak things, you know what I mean? And obviously it requires developers to balance for that sort of thing when it comes to performance, but I would almost have to imagine that the PlayStation 5 will play PS4 games in higher fidelity to a degree.
Yeah, in a way you think about it, because I think this may have been the first time, at least for Sony, where the jump in generation is more or less the same architecture based on what we know.
Yeah.
Because coming off of Cell and then going to PS4 was like, oh, Cell was a nightmare, so now we have this x86 based piece of hardware.
It's like, here's what developers like to develop on, turns out. Here you go.
So if that is a thing that they're going to do, I imagine it's going to be a lot easier than it has been in the past for Sony games, at least.
They have to have that top of mind.
Yeah.
You mentioned what developers have been asking for. One of the things the article highlighted was SSDs, right? And I think for a lot of us, we always assume that just means like, oh yeah, it's quieter and it'll load games a little bit faster. But some of the examples they were laying out there were kind of insane to me. Like the idea of the Spider-Man fast travel going from 15 seconds to half a second or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's not only because it's an SSD, it's because like the data bus that they're using for their SSD is apparently faster than anything available on the PC side right now, which is kind of nuts.
I guess so. I mean, they would probably either be using M.2 NVMe, which is like the top of the line right now on PC, if they're gonna be doing. That stuff is expensive though, and even for PC gamers, like that's still something that is a luxury, not necessarily something you always get when you build a new PC. So that's an impressive thing to hear, because it's like you can slap an SSD into like a PS4 and it's gonna make your load times faster, but like not at that rate.
Not
so.
the way it works on a PC.
Exactly.
Either. You know, like that's was Monster Hunter World's like a really good example. Of like, look at those load times on PS4 and then on a PC with an SSD.
Yeah.
Like it's not half a second fast, but it's still just like boom compared to the console versions.
Yeah, and I guess ray tracing is the other kind of big technical
Yeah.
thing that they dropped, which NVIDIA just sort of, they opened up to their previous line of GPUs, which makes that conversation a bit more interesting because up until now it was really relegated to their new 20 line, the RTX cards.
Yeah, I guess I was surprised by the fact that, you know, AMD is still building the guts of this console. So it's going to be next-gen Ryzen, and it's going to be their next-gen GPU architecture. But AMD they haven't done ray tracing yet.
Right.
It's all been in NVIDIA's kind of space with the RTX cards. And like you mentioned, they brought it over to their previous generation, but it's very like, ray tracing is now like a spectrum to where like, oh, I can have reflections, but not that many reflections if I'm on a weaker card, or I could have the whole thing with like global illumination and all that if you have like the RTX cores in your GPU. So that's another thing too, is that RTX cards on NVIDIA's side can do that stuff because they have a dedicated core to take care of all that processing.
Right.
Because that stuff is intensive. So
Totally.
I mean, when they say like, oh, it's gonna have ray tracing, like to what degree?
Of course.
Because it's not just like ray tracing, you slap it on.
Yeah,
so.
it's my amateur brain way of thinking, it's like a multi-step vector calculation.
Yes.
You only go so many steps before you run out of power to do that without sacrificing frame rate.
Yeah.
But they were also talking about audio being a big thing, and ray tracing can also play a part in that to help sort of calculate spatial audio. Like he said specifically, one of the things I'm really disappointed in from PlayStation 3 to 4 is that there was no advancement in audio tech that was notable to the end user. And it sounds like that's going to be a really big thing for them. And he said the gold standard will be headphones, which maybe isn't a surprise to many people who play games and take audio seriously, but to hear him say that is kind of fascinating.
I like my home theater.
Yeah.
You know, I want to shake the walls. That's what I'm into. So, yeah, I don't know. Headphones aren't really my thing. But at the same time, I think the example they give of like, hey, here's another way that some of the ray tracing stuff can be used for more than just like, hey, the lighting's good.
Yeah.
The idea of just like using it to have more realistic audio. I think that's cool. The more stuff you can kind of do in a physics sort of sense, you know, it means that more developers have access to doing things like that because they don't have to spend a bunch of time either baking it in or spending a bunch of time on the audio if they can just kind of say like, okay, well, it's in the engine, we can just do it.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it until I read the article. Like, oh yeah, audio hasn't really changed all that much, I guess. We don't use sound cards anymore for our PCs.
Right.
Unless we're like extra bougie or something, want to ball out on a sound card, but no one really does that anymore. And the thing too, like virtual 3D audio is a thing, but I mean, of course that's not organic, I guess you can say. It's all, I guess, faked. So if there is like a way to do like the ray tracing techniques for audio, like I want to hear that. I want to know what that sounds like.
Yeah. I think what he mentioned, like lastly, that there's something they're not talking about that is like the game-changing feature of the console, interactive tech, right? We've seen companies do that like Microsoft and it not really work, like with the Kinect. Like, I mean, I guess it worked for Nintendo, you know, with the Wii,
yeah.
But it's like, I don't know.
It depends on your definition of just like what actually is this like game-changing sort of thing.
Well,
right?
it's also marketing, right?
Yeah,
like, of course.
Well, think about what was the patent they had about?
Is it putting your friends in the audience of games?
But different ways to do emulation. Different ways to have access to older games and older platforms and stuff like that.
Oh.
I think if you line that up with where they're at, and they've already said, hey, it'll play PlayStation 4 games, maybe they go further.
That would be awesome.
And I think that's kind of what that patent I think was getting at. When I was looking at that, it seemed like, okay, this is going to do more than just play PS4 and PS5 games. But you know, at the same time, Sony was out there beating the drum all along about like, no one really cares about backwards compatibility. Mainly because they weren't doing it and Microsoft was.
Yeah, they can totally do a 180 on that though.
Oh yeah,
and classic consoles aren't the way to go, I guess.
Especially the Sony classic console, like they really boned that
they
thing
tried
up,
it,
so,
they kind of screwed that one up. And they're like, I don't know. I guess they wouldn't go down that route anymore if they want to reintroduce their older lineups.
Right. So maybe you have something like that. They also kind of allude to just like, well, it's not so much an illusion. It's like he says, hey, we're pioneers in the cloud gaming space, which accurate. You know, they bought Gaikai, they integrated all that stuff into PlayStation Now. but it's not great, and you don't get the impression that they have invested in a cloud infrastructure the same way, you know, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, the way that those kind of players have.
I think there's the potential for cloud gaming, cloud streaming, whatever we're calling it now, like in regards to something like what Google's doing. It doesn't necessarily have to be like that. I have to imagine there are probably ways that Sony could, or anyone could, use that concept and break it out, sort of like with ray tracing, right? Doing something unexpected with it that we didn't really know about.
Like off-put some of that processing power. Kind of like what, I guess what Microsoft did with
so you're getting into crackdown territory, and it doesn't.
Well, maybe Sony could be the one to actually like pull that off, where you have both a game running locally and
I mean, it comes up to the creation behind that game, right? Like the developers. I think Microsoft was just kind of, the way I keep saying is just Trojan horsing like an example or something, rather than saying like, because they were not like, check this shit out, this is the hotness, we've figured this out. They kind of just slipped it in.
Yeah, I feel you.
Yeah. You know, they said that the PlayStation VR will be backwards compatible as well, which means that then you can hook a camera up to that thing. I would love to see them do an updated headset that has better tracking, get rid of those Move controllers once and for all, and get something that actually works.
Yeah, I'd also want to see inside-out tracking, because the PlayStation camera is not it.
It's just terrible. It's terrible. So yeah, hopefully they do something along those lines just to kind of improve the fidelity of that experience. And especially if they have more power driving it, like, you could start to see like, oh, they're building a case for maybe you do a higher resolution headset, or something like that too. But I don't know that really falls into this category of just like, here's this game changer we're not announcing.
Yeah, so I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, I think it's a little ambiguous. But Cerny, I think his name was on that backwards compatibility patent stuff. So maybe that's his baby.
That'd be great.
So we'll see.
Now that I think about it, is when Sony came out and said like, oh, we're going all in on like the local hardware. I kind of see it as, at first I would think that, oh, Sony's going to follow everyone else with what they're doing with Microsoft doing Project xCloud, and then they're going to announce a discless Xbox real soon, and then Google Stadia is going to make a splash, I guess, when it comes around this year. So then now that they've said that, no, we're going all in with a really powerful box, it's kind of like, oh, okay, now they can kind of carve out that space, and because there's a lot of people who still want that stuff.
Yeah.
So
if you think about it, it sets them up for a similar thing that they were able to do around the early PlayStation 4 days, when Microsoft was out there with their always online stuff, and Sony was able to just drop a video of someone handing a disc to someone else. You'd be like, word.
This is how you share your games on PS4.
Thanks.
If Microsoft pushes too hard into the cloud stuff, and obviously that's all Google is, Sony can just as easily go like, hey, just buy a game, put it in, it works.
Yeah.
After it patches. But they can at least say like, hey, we value you, the existing player. We're not just going after this like 2 billion, however many other people they can get when they start, letting you stream it to phones and all that other stuff. So,
what if streaming can somehow get ahead of having to download patches and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think that'd be cool. To me, I think streaming and the cloud stuff is really valuable for demos. I think that would be really cool. But also, like, smart. Hey, if you are installing the game, or if you've preloaded it or pre-purchased, we're going to let you stream the first hour of it instead of download it or something like that. There's a lot of kind of hybrid solutions that I think Microsoft would be smart to get into that sort of thing too, I think.
Yeah, Microsoft is seemingly getting in bed with Nintendo, right?
Sure.
So I guess back to your point, like everyone's kind of setting themselves up to have this identity, like Microsoft is going to be the friendly, I don't know what to call them, but
they're
like
we got beat real bad last time.
Yeah,
we got to
so
be nice
everything.
to everybody.
Yeah.
We love the players.
forming a damn alliance
and
out
devs,
there.
and that seems to be working for whatever that's worth. And then Google's just got money in racks. Racks and racks, I guess.
And Apple as well. They're doing their arcade thing.
Yeah, they're going to fund games that way and get their timed exclusives on phones, which that's not something I want to have to deal with, but there you go. I think like you're starting to see the battle lines be drawn for what we're going to be looking at for the next few years here, and I think more than normal, it seems like everyone's got a slightly different take on things, as opposed to just like Microsoft and Sony being basically the same thing. It feels like fundamentally different this time out, and I don't know. It's interesting to see like actual different visions for how the next 5 to 10 years should go, and I don't know what the right answer is, which is kind of exciting too.
Yeah.